I hope trouble causes. Today I've found this old early mid-50s turntable in all my spares. It's been in there for years. It came in completely shot. The mechanism rusted shut. Well, just seized shut. And there's no cartridge, no stylus. Pretty sure, if I remember rightly, there's no tubes in it either. I bought it from a car boot sale for, I don't know, 5 or 10 quid years ago. So because it's not really worth so, it's probably only worth 50 quid in this state, even if I was to fix it all up, and it probably cost me 20 to fix it. So I'm going to turn it into a little guitar amp, just because that's more fun. I wouldn't do this with a record player that was worth saving, got to admit. I'm not really that sort. As you can see from the channel, I tend to fix things rather than change them into something else. But I do this sometimes. You know, some things can't be saved. Better to use them for something else and ending up in landfill at some point. And they can go on having another few decades of a life fulfilling some awesome purpose. Well, one of the most obvious reasons that I want to use this one for this, aside from it being shot in for its original purpose, is the fact that the speaker faces onto the outside of the cab anyway, so aesthetically it works a lot better than most would. As quite a lot of them, the speakers are revealed when you lift the lid up, they face out this way. You know, either that or the speaker is, just move this camera, speakers, you know, like on a dance set or an Elizabethan and stuff like that. Most of them are across the front there. So again, not really that much use, not really the aesthetic you want when you're trying to have a guitar amp. Having been able to put it up, you know, turn it so that this part faces out towards you and it's got the speaker there, is much cooler, I think. Okay, so this is the inside. As I said, the speaker there that faces outwards, which is a cool feature. Also, as I said, with all this being so short, I think probably we'll just remove all of this paraphernalia. Very, very small chance something might be of use to someone. There's a couple of things I'll put away in case anyone ever gets in touch and says they need one of these head shells, or if the rubber wheels alright inside and still supple, etc. I'll keep that by again in case someone brings one by that just need that simple part rather than paying for a new one or a refurbished one. Sometimes just makes it feasible to do the repair at all if you've got an old thing laying about that you can put in without charging the customer for the part. So useful bits like that I put by, like this little cap on the voltage selector there for the power supply. It's quite a distinctive looking thing, so I'll probably stick that in a little box, and all that'll just go in a little box with the name of the record player, which is a Philips Disc Jockey Major, and I'll put them by just in case anyone ever gets in touch at some point and says, do you happen to have one of these? Other than that, most of the mechanism parts underneath are you know, all but shot, really. Not really worth saving, I shouldn't think. Plus there's a limit to how much things I can put in a little box and save by. Okay, so that's what's on the inside. There were tubes in it actually, I was wrong. So that's a bonus. I think what I'm going to do to start with is just because the easiest way to put this chassis back in is just going to be to mount it on the same board that it's mounted on now, and turn it round so it's on the other side rather than just behind the speaker, and put that, just place it back in. Obviously the controls are going to have to be brought to the outside somewhere, which I haven't decided what I'm going to do. I haven't even thought about it yet. So I'm just going to take away all of the paraphernalia we don't need, and then I'm going to remove the parts that we do want from that board, and then we can just work out what's on the chassis, work out what the plan is, and then work on that out of the box, so it's easier to move. So there's the chassis out and all its accoutrements, and that is basically, I wonder if you can see that. That is basically what we've got in there. See if I can get a better angle on it. Right, so that's what's in there. Now, this EL84 setup like this is drawing about 40 milliamps on the plate and another 4 or 5 on the screen, and then this thing's drawing like half a milliamp or something, and one gain stage with, if you look, there it is, so you can get it shot, there's negative feedback there back to the cathode of that preamp tube, and with only a 10k resistor there, that's quite a lot of negative feedback. And then this off the plate of the preamp tube there goes in the grid of the power tube, but also you've got this tone control, which of course is frequency selective negative feedback. And then of course obviously the cathode of the preamp tube is bypassed as well, so that's more negative feedback, less gain. So I'm going to guess and say, without firing this thing up and testing it, that this is not enough for a guitar into this. So I think what I'm going to do, knowing that the power transformer is going to handle like 45 milliamps plus another one, so I'm guessing that that's the same transformer as in all those other Philips things, same era, like the, is it the EL3541, I think, tape recorder has got a power transformer that, and I did upload to them back in the day. These, I'm sure that power transformer is identical, and that's probably more 60 milliamps or so, I should think. I can't be bothered to think about it right now, but I'm sure there's at least 50 milliamps on that transformer. So I think maybe we could reduce the gain on this tube just ever so slightly, just by a milliamp or two, and then replace this tube with a double triode 12AX7, or two triodes like a 5879s or whatever, and or pentodes even, sorry, like 5879s, and then just triode strap them, so you end up with two gain sections, same as a 12AX7, or something like that. So because I'm thinking, you know, this had a tube rectifier to start with, EZ40, and that takes 0.6 amp at the filaments. So I know I've got enough in the filaments in transformer to swap this out with. I mean, I could even add in a full two stage gain stages, but I just don't think there's any need to. So it's basically what it's going to end up is like a Fender Princeton, you know, like a, is it a 5F2A or 5E2, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you know, 6V6 here with a, I think usually 470 ohm resistor on it and about 300 volts on a plate, something like that. And then there's two sections of a 12AX7 with a simple sort of frequency selective drain to ground, you know, as a tone control. It's sort of strapped across the volume control between the two stages, two gain stages. So I think I'm probably going to end up with something like that basically, and then work out how to physically put it in the chassis. But it shouldn't be too much trouble, and then I'm, you know, getting a tried and tested good sound for a guitar, and I'm not messing around trying to breadboard different things and, you know, faffing about basically, which is a thing I rarely have time for. Right, so here we go. all very conventional. It is just pretty much a Fender Princeton, except this is a EL84 instead of a 6V6, which is a 6BQ5 if you're in the States. So yeah, all very conventional. First preamp stage, volume and tone controls. Second preamp stage, this network joins the secondary speaker transformer for negative feedback, and then out master volume control, grid stopper into the power tube. Yeah, very conventional, but that works. Nice and simple. By the way, apologies for all the crazy wind noise and whatnot in the background. We've got a storm battering the hell out of the workshop. Like that. I don't know if the camera's actually wobbling visibly to you guys, but the whole bench is to me. Right, I think the best thing to do with all this, take away all the unnecessary stuff. In fact, I'll probably just strip down the whole chassis, take everything off it, and then clean it all up and start again. I think that's probably the easiest thing to do. So this is all we're really having to get rid of in the electronics. Tag strip with a few bits on it, a bit of old wire. The power switch, when you test across it, it doesn't make a connection anymore. I think that's probably one of the reasons why it ended up being ditched however many decades ago. These caps are melted, I mean look, dead. And this thing would have had to be replaced no matter what you did with it. So the other thing is in the tube sockets, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, if you can even see it at all. Inside the ones with the shields on is just really not very good lighting here today. But yeah, inside the ones with the screens on is all rusted up inside. And for the cost of a couple of quid tube socket, there's no guarantee it's going to work very well, even if I did sort it out. If it's that bad. So I'm probably just going to drill out all three, clean up this plate, and put in the two new sockets that we'll actually need. Just look what these paper washers had done over time. That's the remnants of them there. I'm just about to actually clean it all up. Definitely couldn't have left those on there. Right, so cleaned up as best we can. I've got a speaker transformer, obviously, mains transformer, I've got a power tube. The mains cable's fine, so I'll just reuse that. I think this will probably be fine, but I'm just going to check it. Then there's this whole housing that the pilot light is in, and then that red thing, it goes through there, and there's a clasp. I've got it all rattling about in there so I don't lose it. So, you know, aside from a few caps and resistors, I mean, that's essentially the whole amp. You know, all the expense is just from that one cheap record player, rather than, you know, £80–90 for this and £50–60 for this, and a few quid's worth of mains cable and a plug, and buying the metal for the chassis and having to do the metal work all yourself, and a power tube of probably 15–20 quid. Although, to be honest, I have so many tubes lying about that I'm not even sure the last time I had to buy something as common as an EL84. I must have at least 20 odd vintage ones just sat about. Okie dokie. Transformers are back in place and 2 new tube sockets. Well, they're 60-year-old tube sockets, but they've never been used before, so they're new in that respect. So it's all looking a lot healthier. Now I can start getting on with the interesting parts. First thing is, this is something you might have to watch out for if you do any similar sort of job. Can you see that there are two contacts there on the back of the transformer that are attached to each other, electronically speaking, and then they're both attached to this. That's because the centre tap of the HT winding and the one side of the heater winding were both to ground, but we don't want one side of the heater winding to ground, so you need to really just take that whole thing off and put a new wire on the centre tap to attach it to whatever central ground point you're going to use, and then do whatever you're going to do with the heater winding, which in my case probably just put a couple of 100 ohm resistors from each side of the heater winding to ground. This is just a guitar amp. I don't think a elevated heater supply or DC heaters or anything like that are necessary in a little Champ Princeton type thing. I've cleaned off all the contacts for the secondaries, took all the wires off, and then I'm going to do the same thing for all the primary side. Take those off, and then we'll work out which two are for the 240, 245, whatever, and we'll just leave all the other ones with no wire attached, because we have no reason to keep them. Right, as you can see, I put some tag strips around so I can bounce components off of them, and then I've just done the high voltage winding on the secondary, the extremities to 2 diodes, and then to the positive side of the cap, which is then grounded, and the centre tap of the high voltage winding is grounded, so it's basically just the first stage of the power supply. Just because we get more voltage than we did through the tube rectifier out the other side of it, it won't be as big a voltage drop, and also I want to put another filter in compared to the original, so I'd like to know how much HT voltage I've got before I design that. So I've basically just got primaries there attached to a plug socket, that will be in a minute. I'll bring it up on a variac and then we'll find out how much voltage we've got. There we go, 325 volts, 326, thereabouts. So again, all very simple power supply there. This part here obviously feeds all very simple. These are solid as a rock, by the way. I could lift the amp up with them. It was just easier to do it like that than to try and concoct some of the thing around the other side. Again, when stuff are for me, I just I do what's necessary, and generally not much else. I don't have much time to do my own things from my own studio, so I just sort of fit them in when I can, and they're just as, just as solid. Sometimes don't have the aesthetic qualities that I put in the customer stuff. So that's the 2.2k resistor that feeds the screen. I kept it up here to keep it out of the way of the heater wiring, because it's quite a big resistor, and then too big, fair enough, but it means it'll never get hot. That's the 15k one, and then that feeds these 200k resistors. Again, this one can feasibly just go straight to the socket. This one, I'm going to do it via a small piece of wire onto one of these tags. Just to show you this so far before I put these heater wires across to the preamp tube. So just some really obvious stuff to keep to, like, you know, I've kept all the power over here and all the signals, all the anode outs and the grids in are all coming, you know, apart from this one. It was just a direct wire going under there. Everything else is going onto a tag plate, grid in to the EL84, and this is the grid stuff for the double triode for the first section. And cathode stuff for the first section. So the only bit that I couldn't fit around there was the cathode resistor for the second section, and the feedback wire there coming out, so I'll eventually go off to that part of the circuit. So now I can attach all the signal cables that are going up to pots all just in one place, and bind them all together and send them out as one big loom, which makes it all very nice and simple. And the heater wires from this perspective are going to come up, over and down, so they'll be not going near anything. And from this side there, see if I can just get this out. I don't know if I can really show you what's going on there. They're on a tag plate on the other side. These of course are going to be on the transformer. And that is the for the centre tap for the heater supply. So again, all very obvious and straightforward. I've found a panel that I can put on the front to use for an input jack and all the controls and whatnot. So I'm just cutting out the hole I'm going to need to mount it over the front of before I clean the case up. So that's the chassis finished. Not much to add from last time that I filmed a little. So all the you know, grid and anode connections, signal connections, all run together from one side, as do the feedback wires in a loom. We'll then meet this panel. This is the thing for the pilot light that I just need to secure it a bit better. As you can see, it's wiggling about. As you can see on the back here, the all these cases are attached electronically to this plate. And this is obviously not an isolating jack, so the ground part of it, the shield part of it, is attached to this plate, and the only one of these cables that's got the ground attached at both ends is the one for the input, and that ground takes all the grounds from this plate, or the collective ground from this plate, and down the relevant cable to the input of the first. It's on the wire that carries the input to the first grid, and then its shield is still connected, but it's the only one. All the others only have their shield connected down at the amp end, and then of course this bar is isolated from everything except this one point. It all carries back to the same place the centre tap of the high voltage winding goes, the same place the first two filter caps ground, and the same place that the earth wire from the mains is attached. Ordinarily I'd put all these, as you know if you watch any other videos of what I've made, I'd put all these on solder tags, and then I'd ground them on one corner of the power transformer. But just because I'm converting this thing, and because it's for me, I'm saving myself the bother and the price of a few solder tags, and I've just soldered it all in there. I should imagine it'll work perfectly well, but we'll find out. Can't seem to get the camera to show you, but I've just been cleaning up the front. Well, the entire case in fact. And if you could see the difference actually in the room between this patch has been done and then this has not. It's like night and day when you're actually in the room with it. And there we are, all cleaned up. It really does take quite a lot of work to get one of these when they're in quite that state. I mean, this thing looked like it was one uniform brown colour. It's actually like a pale snakeskin pattern. I don't know how much you can see of that on camera, of the pattern. It's like a repeating pattern across it. Actually a pretty cool looking thing now. Right, so this is the inside done now, so we've got mains coming in, and obviously the earth and the neutral are just going straight through, and the live, third one from the back, is via the fuse up to the switch, back down, and then to the circuit. Then these leads just long enough, but that's for a reason, because when they fall, when you look at it from the correct angle, they don't go anywhere near the mains lead or the HT or the LT rather, the heater supply that's coming to this power line. And then the speaker cables, if you watch when they drop, and because they're suspended from that, obviously by gravity when you've got it the right way up, they fall like this, and then that falls away downwards, but its downward trajectory, well, distance rather, is restricted by the fact that it's caught on there. So when you close it all up and turn it the right way up, none of the cables that need to be kept away from one another are going anywhere near each other. And then those, they're not tight because of this, they're just right basically. So that's the panel in there. I just need to secure this to the bottom. And that's all perfect. And then switch it out. As you can see, it looks very different. To how it looked as a record player, because it was knackered before. Now it's not knackered. So I've got a tone there, that's the on off switch as well, and the gain, master volume, adjustable feedback. I know it would make sense to put the gain there and the master volume there. Thing is, I wanted to use these old dial tops, and obviously because it's for me, I'm using up parts. I don't like order parts to use in my own stuff, because I always have something lying around, so I use the stuff I'm not going to use in other things. So because of the pots that I found, certain ones of these kind of pots obviously will only go in certain types of dial tops. So the only configuration I could find that actually worked well with these was to do it like this, which is fine because it'll only be me using it. Play around with them for 5 minutes, kind of obvious what they do anyway. I'll probably put some Electroset thing underneath or somewhere around, and then how did I put it on? Oh yeah, there we go. There's the external speaker output that cuts this speaker out when you plug a jack into it. So if you want to use it with an external speaker and just use the 910 watt amp with a bigger speaker, then so be it. So now we'll do a proper test, which of course, you know, involves a guitar.